One of the biggest mysteries that plagues the White Scars and all of their successor chapters is the disappearance of their Primarch Jaghatai Khan. Like so many of his loyalist Primarch brethren, the Khan of Khans was taken from the Imperium of Man 10,000 years ago. Since then, a cloud of myth has surrounded his departure. Many of the tellings become legends that are clearly over-embellished to the point of disbelief, but despite the questionable credibility of these stories, many of the accounts that come directly from the White Scars and their successors have similarities that help us paint a clear picture of the last days of Jaghatai Khan. And that's what we're going to talk about today in another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. If you're new to the channel, allow me to introduce myself. I am your host, Gersh1, your guide through this unbelievably large and sandboxy world of Warhammer 40,000. For the entire month of February, I will be covering specific Space Marine chapters every week. This entire week is going to be dedicated to the White Scars, so if you have any suggestions or questions about these Astartes warriors, please leave me a comment down in the comment section below. And if you like this style of faction-focused lore, please hunt down the like button and force it to tell you the true whereabouts of the Khan of Khans. By doing so, it helps this video reach a wider audience and more people learn about the White Scars. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts and lore on the disappearance of Jaghatai Khan. As all of you already know, the White Scars Legion was instrumental in the protection of the Imperium of Man during the Siege of Terra. Thanks to the superb military genius of the Khan, the traitors lost vital orbital support during the battle and ultimately lost the conflict known as the Horus Heresy. What followed was known as the Great Scouring, when the Loyalist forces hunted down the Chaos Space Marines and pacified the planets that dared to rebel against the Emperor of Mankind. Horus's rebellion had torn the Imperium in two, and no part of Imperial space had escaped its ravages. The Yazan sector was no exception. It was there that the White Scars' homeworld of Chagoris lay, but when the Great Khan returned to rebuild his legion's strength after the devastating losses of the Heresy, he found only misery. Not all of the Yazan sector's scores of worlds had remained loyal, and in the anarchy of rebellion, the insidious Drukhari, sometimes referred to as the Dark Eldar, had seized the opportunity to raid and take slaves with wanton abandon. Thousands were cut down and thousands more enslaved, carried off through the secret passages of the Webway to meet a fate no mortal human could imagine. Many of those Imperial citizens were still loyal to Terra and were on the verge of despair. It was only thanks to the garrisons left by the Khan that Chagoris and some of its key production and recruitment worlds had fared better than the rest of the sector. But these forces had not been entirely adequate. The Drukhari had been able to seize Chagorian tribespeople as slaves. Some of the Great Khan senior officers argued that had the garrison stayed on the homeworld and not sent detachments to defend some of the worlds of the Yazan sector, the Chagorians would have never been lost. Jaghatai waived these claims, applauding the garrison's warlike and independent spirit, but hatred for those who had taken his people burned in his heart. Replenishing his ranks, the Great Khan took the fight to the enemy, and his campaign now became a campaign of vengeance. With the Khan at its head, the effort to reclaim the Yazan sector was met with early successes. Thanks to the foresight of the Chagorian garrison, the Yazan campaign's momentum was maintained with a steady supply of munitions, vehicles, and fresh warriors. However, it was at this point that the White Scars learned of the Codex Astartes, in which Guilliman stated that all of the Space Marine legions should break their forces into 1,000 warrior chapters. Jaghatai, who had long allowed his Khan to operate semi-independently, was in favor of this reform. The Codex would for the most part simply formalize the way in which the White Scars had operated since their inception, and the Khan of Khans saw only virtue in extending ever greater freedoms to his sons. After the Codex reform was implemented, Jaghatai asked only one thing of his successors, that they fight the Yazan campaign to the end. He trusted them to do so without further supervision and in whatever fashion best suited his strengths. They all agreed. Though it saddened him to see that many of his sons' armors no longer were painted in his colors, the Khan knew that this was for the better. Their movements would be harder to track and predict, and a completely decentralized structure would allow the Great Khan to pursue his own agenda more fully. The Yazan campaign was a time of renewed vigor for Jaghatai Khan. His hunting grounds of old were filled with the remnants of those who had turned against the Imperium during the Heresy, and he was once again able to indulge in the visceral thrill of new conquest and glorious victories, albeit tainted by the knowledge of the damage done by Horus's treachery. He led the White Scars on battlefield after battlefield, sweeping Sebos clear of the depraved Emperor's children, uprooting the Dark Mechanicus clinging to Anapole, and quelling the mutant uprising of Eklight. But the Drukhari remain elusive, their attacks impossible for even the chapter Stormseers to predict. After much deliberation, Jaghatai discovered a pattern so elaborate that only the Primarch's genius and the Great Khan's skill of the hunt could find it. Calling for reinforcements from the Destroyers, Rampagers, and Stormlords, Jaghatai set his fleet on course for the world of Coruscant 5. The Drukhari, like all Eldari, are a species of great and ancient intellect, and it appeared that it was their intention that the Khan discovered their plans as part of a wider scheme to capture and subject Jaghatai and his sons to twisted experimentations. The tales told by the Stormseers say that Jaghatai saw this for what it was and led the assault nonetheless, determined to attack with such speed and ferocity that no manner of preparation could withstand it. The source of the Drukhari raids was a large webway portal located in the depths of a dark, foreboding forest too dense for the White Scars and their allies to fight from their metal steeds. This did not face Jaghatai. Revenge would be had. Honor demanded it. The Khan and his First Brotherhood held the center of the battle line, driving straight towards the portal. The rest of his forces secured the flanks, wary for potential ambushes and ready to encircle the Drukhari's eldritch device. The White Scars and their allies were a stick to a nest of stinging insects, and their attack's ferocity was met by a deadly ambush of dozens of bands of warriors, pain engines, and all manner of hideous Drukhari creations. Many poured from hideaways concealed by the eldritch energy. The Space Marines were beset on all sides. Scores of the Great Khan's sons died horrific, painful deaths. Others were captured, doomed to a worse fate in the arenas of the dark city of Kamara. But the Warhawk kept on, determined to reach his quarry. The Drukhari Archon stood before the portal itself, directing his warriors with flicks of his sword. He was laughing, savoring every source of pain inflicted and suffered across the battlefield. The smile did not leave his face even as he observed the Khan racing towards him. Without any loss of composure, he simply directed more of his forces into Jaghatai's direction, slowing the Khan down and driving him to even greater anger. The Great Khan could not be halted, however. He pushed onward, his First Brotherhood at his side, cutting down foe after foe with his sword. It is said that with his forces failing, the Archon moved to flee into the webway portal. It cannot be known whether or not the Xeno desired to close it before Jaghatai Khan raced through with his entirety of his Brotherhood. All that can be known is that as soon as the last White Scar crossed the threshold, the shimmering gateway collapsed. Battle raged on for solar hours after, the remaining White Scars slaughtering without mercy those Drukhari abandoned by their lord. For solar days they scoured the battlefield, for solar weeks the rest of the system. The Stormseers searched the warp for any clue of the Great Khan's whereabouts, but none were found. It has been said by some White Scars that perhaps pursuit was not Jaghatai's only goal in following the Drukhari overlord into whatever lay beyond the portal. That perhaps there the Khan saw an opportunity for freedom without limits and an endless plain to explore and make war in. Those who express this view can find themselves shunned by their brothers, but the seed of doubt now is long planted. Only the Khan of Khans knows the truth, and the White Scars continue to live in this belief that he will someday return and take his rightful place at the head of his chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media you guys use. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want to support us, there is a Patreon link down in the description below. It's just $1 a month, so it's nothing crazy. But I really do appreciate you guys listening. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first.